Hey, I'm Sven Masterson, one of the co-founders and mentors in the Mentoring Men community, and I show men how to transform broken, painful, dying, and disconnected relationships into deeply connected, thriving, intimate, and passionate relationships. And in the next several videos, I want to talk to you about the complexity of trying to navigate through a scenario where you believe your wife or partner may be having an emotional and maybe a physical affair. This can be incredibly challenging to sort through as a man, and yet many have to do that. In fact, we talk to about out of several hundred men we speak to every year, about a quarter of those are grappling with this very thing. They have a wife or partner who feels very disconnected, distant. She may be doing strange things. She may be on her phone a lot. She may be kind of exhibiting some strange behaviors, like going out when she never went out before. Lots of stuff. Men have all kinds of things that they see that start to make them worry. And so I want to start actually with that very thing. When you start noticing things that are a little disquieting, a little uncomfortable to see. For a lot of men, this really begins with a wife or partner on her cell phone. Maybe a man notices, man, she's on her phone a lot more than usual. She won't put that thing down. She seems to be hiding it a little bit, or she keeps the screen away from other people. She's locking her phone when she didn't lock her phone. She's unavailable for long stretches of time. And so I want to begin here with talking about what do we do when we observe a person's behavior and how it relates to this idea of having an affair. Well, the first thing we need to talk about is getting clear about our thinking. You see, most of these men we talk to that are experiencing this, about half of them are what a psychologist or a therapist might classify as anxiously attached men. They're men who are very insecure. They wouldn't call themselves insecure. They're not underachievers. They're not men that you would look at and say, oh, that's a weak, insecure man. A lot of them are quite accomplished. A lot of them are leaders in industry. They're leaders in places like the military, law enforcement. They're strong men. They're successful men. And they feel like $1 million just about everywhere in the world except their kitchen and their bedroom. And when it comes to the woman in their life, they feel quite a bit of anxiety if she looks at all like she's not interested, she's not attracted, or she's off doing something else. And so when a man like this starts to notice behaviors in the woman in his life, this guy kind of freaks out. So what's going on here? Well, the first thing we need to talk about in this is understanding what's going on in your thinking. We have a process as humans of thinking where we begin with observation. That is, what are our senses telling us, right? And that would be, in this example, I'm observing my wife or partner on her cell phone. That's my observation. Well, we do this next thing in our human brains called inference. We infer certain conclusions from what we observe. And that might be inferring that maybe she is, distracted or unavailable, for example. And then we move from inference to interpretation. And that would be where we start to connect these dots between what we observe and infer with meaning, such as, my wife is not interested in the marriage, she's having an affair. Let me give you an example of this. Recently, one of my children came screaming into our kitchen, and I inquired about, well, what's wrong? And she said her sister had taken down this picture that she drew. And I'm sure if you're a father, you've probably gotten a lot of these. I like to keep these. These are special to me. But this one's special to me because it had been in our stairwell for a number of months at a bulletin board. And one of my other daughters moved this picture to another location. And my youngest daughter was just distraught. And so I inquired about it. What happened? So he told me, observation, such and such, I won't name them, moved my picture, took my picture down. And so I called the other sister into the room and I said, what happened? And she told me, well, I moved the picture. And she had a reason for moving that picture to make room for some other necessary things. And so she moved it from the stairwell to our schoolroom. But my youngest daughter had made some inferences and some interpretations that when I inquired into them, she had connected these dots. And so when I asked her about it, she said, well, she moved that because she doesn't like me. Okay? That is to infer and interpret. And when I asked her, well, what would that mean if she didn't like you? And we went a little bit deeper. It was about feeling valuable, feeling worthy, feeling like a decent human being. And so my little girl had basically made the meaning of moving this picture from one location to the other into this subconscious or partially subconscious story that she didn't have value in the eyes of her sister, and maybe not at all. Now, this is an example that I hope that you can relate to and understand, but you know, grown men, women, everybody, we're doing this all the time. We have this propensity in our brains to connect the dots. We don't realize we're doing it half of the time, and those connections from observation to inference to interpretation are what give us or trigger within us emotional experiences. Then once we're emotionally triggered, that creates a feedback loop into our observation that kind of bolsters and solidifies our interpretations. And this can be a very toxic thing in a person's life. It can be really hard in a relationship. Now, when an anxiously attached man is seeing his wife do something and he's inferring and interpreting something, what he doesn't realize is he is interpreting life and what he sees not based on objective truth, but by his insecurities, by his hurts, by his pain and wounding from a lifetime. And so these guys, whether or not their wife is or partner is having an affair of some kind, are going to feel pretty much as though she is. They feel hugely disconnected. They feel like threatened. They feel anxious, afraid. And what they're feeling is largely due to their interpretation and their inference. And so they start acting like men who need to prepare to be hurt. Now, what do you think happens in a relationship, a romantic relationship, based on vulnerability and intimacy, when one partner starts to behave as though they're about to get their ass whooped? I'll tell you what happens. They pull back, they retract, they look scared, they look concerned, they put on facial expressions that other people see. And when that other person sees that, they interpret it and infer in their brains. And so we start creating this realm of thought in one another that starts to breed distrust, hostility, distance, and disconnection. And I have seen a number of marriages torpedoed, absolutely torpedoed, by this very pattern, that a man or a woman, both of them, are believing their inferences and their interpretation instead of learning just to hold on to your observation, but loosen your grip on what you're interpreting, realizing your interpretations are not generally fact. They're coming from your personal experience as a human being. I like to tell another story where in our men's community, we have a number of members all over the world. And one day I was on a session with a man and I noticed a message come in that was a panicked message from a member who said, hey, I need to suspend my subscription. It comes out of this credit card and I don't have any money. And there was a tone of anxiety in this man's message. And I have a busy day. I talk to men all over the world. And so I quickly sent the word, I did what he asked, and I sent the word done. Now, this gentleman interpreted and inferred that I was upset with him, that I was perturbed, that he needed to suspend his subscription, none of which was true. In fact, from my perspective, I tried to serve the man out of a place of high regard, thinking, yeah, I hate that feeling when it looks like you're going to experience some sort of overdraft in the bank, for example, and the panic that comes with that of believing that you're about to experience a financial hardship. And so I acted promptly out of love. But you see, in this man's story, the word done, period, triggered some inference and observation that made him feel insecure and like there was a story there, that maybe I had some beef with him, that maybe I don't care, that maybe I'm disappointed or upset that he needed to suspend his membership. None of which was true. And so these kinds of things are happening to us in marriage all the time. And it's important that before you dive super deep into trying to figure out, is my wife having an emotional affair or physical affair, we need to first start with understanding this pattern of our thinking, that observation, inference, and interpretation are all happening, but only one of them is generally very trustable. Now, it doesn't mean our inferences and interpretations are never correct. It just means that they're fueled by some patterns in our thinking, our experiences, that oftentimes are misjudging or are characteristic of our hurt and our pain. And they can really start to sabotage a marriage, a relationship. And if you are hasty in following those interpretations with questions like, are you cheating on me? When a woman is simply looking at her cell phone, you risk interpreting completely incorrectly and saying some things that cause distrust, additional disconnection, and really coming to further patterns that you don't want in your life. And so I hope you'll continue to stay with me. In the next videos, we're going to talk about some other ways to navigate this. If you're watching this and you're saying, hey, yeah, I do think I'm anxiously attached. I have a hard time sorting out my thinking. I tend to believe I know what's coming in the future. That's a dead giveaway that you're living in this space. You're living in the land of prediction. That's a good way to know that you're in this realm. And I would highly encourage you not to pursue figuring out yet if your wife or partner is having an affair, but that you first learn to get a handle on your thinking. Now, let me say some of that again. A dead giveaway that you are living in anxiety is that you have a lot of thoughts, ruminating thoughts, about the future. And in those thoughts, you're imagining a calamitous future where you are losing something like a relationship, you're getting divorced, you're getting separated, you're experiencing pain. So the context in your thinking when we're being this way is the future. So thoughts about the future unfolding in a horrible way are a great indication that you're up here caught up in your thoughts. And a man caught up in his thoughts is never going to produce a solid, connected, intimate relationship. In fact, in our work with men, that's what we have to really explain to them and show them over time how to stop doing. Because the life they want can't be lived if they're living in the future of their thinking. And so this is a very hard thing to learn how to do at first, but it's the way to have a great relationship. And so if you find yourself ruminating in your head about the future, just know you're experiencing anxiety. And it's not generally a good idea to make big, weighty decisions or accusations or inquiries from a state of anxiety. Now, if that's you, again, I would like you to watch the rest of these videos, but if you want to talk about this very pattern, this pattern of jumping to conclusions from your observations, I'd like you to scroll below, look in the video description, and you'll find a link where you can connect with myself or our community. I want you to follow that link and get started looking into that. There's not going to be any cost to do so. It's complimentary, but you can get started looking into some of these patterns and topics a little deeper. And with that, I'll see you in the next video.